All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about the measure phase of DMAIC. And honestly, this is where the rubber meets the road. It's the phase where we stop guessing, stop relying on gut feelings, and start dealing with cold, hard facts. This is where we uncover the truth about our process.
Here's our game plan for mastering this. First, we'll hit the moment of truth, why this is all so important. Then, we'll talk about trusting your tools, which you have to do before you start. After that, we'll get into building the data picture, using that picture to find the vital few problems, and then we'll wrap it all up by creating a final scorecard. Okay, so let's get into that moment of truth. This is really the heart of it. It's that point where we move past assumptions and anecdotes and start looking at what the data is actually telling us about what's happening.
I mean, think about it for a second. How do you fix a problem that you can't truly see or define? The simple answer is, well, you can't. You're just taking a stab in the dark, hoping you hit something. And that's exactly why the measure phase exists, to turn the lights on.
This marathon analogy just nails it. It's all about establishing a baseline. You have to know where you're starting from. Are you running a 12-minute mile right now or an 8-minute mile? If you don't know that number, any training plan is just guesswork. The measure phase is all about finding that starting line for your process. But hold on a second. Before we collect even one piece of data, we have to be absolutely sure we can trust our tools. And this brings us to a step you just cannot skip: measurement system analysis, or MSA for short.
And look, this is so important. If your measurement system is broken, if your ruler is bent, then all the data you collect is junk. In fact, it's worse than having no data at all, because bad data will actively lead you down the wrong path. MSA is basically a quality check on your data collection itself.
So, inside MSA, we're looking at two main things. First up is repeatability. That's all about the tool. If I measure the exact same thing 3 times, do I get the same answer every time? Then you've got reproducibility. This is about the people. If you and I both use the same tool to measure the same thing, do we get the same answer? You got to check both.
This right here is why MSA is a must. Imagine one doctor says you have a high fever, another says you're perfectly fine, and a third says you have hypothermia. You wouldn't trust any of them, right? The problem isn't you, the patient. It's the measurement system. We have to make sure our thermometers work before we can trust the diagnosis.
All right, so we've confirmed we can trust our measurement system. Now the fun begins. It's time to start building the data picture and see what's really going on in our process. Let's look at the core tools we use to do this.
Think of these 3 as your essential data collection toolkit. You've got the check sheet, which is amazing for capturing data live, as it happens. Then there's the histogram, which gives you a beautiful snapshot of the shape of your data. And the run chart, which helps you see trends over time.
The check sheet is one of my favorites because it's so simple yet so effective. It's just a basic form where you make a tally mark every time something happens. Like a support agent makes a tick every time a customer calls about a billing issue versus a technical issue. You get a clear picture right away, straight from the source.
Next up, the histogram. This tool takes all that raw data you've collected, let's say hundreds of delivery times, and it sorts them into a nice bar chart. And boom, instantly you can see the shape of your process. Is everything clustered nicely in the middle, or is it skewed with a long tail of late deliveries? A histogram makes that pattern just pop right off the page.
Okay, we've got a pile of good, trustworthy data. But now what? Where do we even start? This leads us to one of the most powerful ideas in all of business, honestly: finding the vital few using the Pareto principle.
You've probably heard of this one, the 80-20 rule. And let me tell you, it's a total game changer. It says that in pretty much any situation, a small handful of causes are driving the majority of your problems. Our job is to use data to pinpoint that critical 20%.
Just look at this chart. This is a real example from a hospital ER. You can see a bunch of different causes for delays, right? But look closer. 2 of those bars, staff shortages and lab delays, are towering over everything else. They account for over 70% of the entire problem. Now we know exactly where to focus. That's the power of Pareto.
This analogy is just perfect. If your boat is sinking, are you going to waste time patching all the tiny little pinhole leaks? Or are you going to go straight for the massive hole that's letting in all the water? Pareto is the tool that finds that giant hole so you can stay afloat. So this brings us to the final step of the measure phase. We've got our data, we trust it, and we know which problems are the big ones. Now it's time to put it all together and create our final scorecard. One clear number that tells us how our process is performing right now. And the gold standard here is DPMO, which stands for defects per million opportunities. Now, I know it sounds a little intimidating, but the formula is actually really simple. You just count up your defects and you divide that by your total units times the number of ways each unit could have failed. Then times it by 1,000,000 to get that standard score.
Let's use our bakery example to make it real. Say they found 500 defective loaves out of 10,000 they baked, and each loaf had 3 ways it could fail. It could be burnt, undercooked, or misshapen. You plug those numbers into the formula, and bam, you get a DPMO of 16,667. That's it. That's our baseline. That is the number to beat.
So what does a number like that actually mean? This table really puts it all into perspective. A process that's running at 3 sigma, which, sounds pretty decent, is like an airline losing almost 67,000 bags for every million it handles. But a world-class 6 sigma process, it loses just 3 or 4. That's the massive leap in performance we're talking about.
And that's where we'll leave it. The measure phase is done. We have our baseline, we know how big the problem is, and thanks to Pareto, we know exactly where to focus our efforts. The data has told us the what. So, the question that perfectly sets up our next phase, the analyze phase, is this: what's the first root cause you're going to hunt for?